actively trying to become the next governor of the Bank of England? Probably not, yeah. And what are you doing for national security apart from putting a little shampoo bottle in a plastic bag? You can't do anything about these things. But what can you do about climate change? Well, you can actually do quite a lot. So at the start of this year, I went vegan for the month of January. I did meat-free Mondays. I took her for some tofu Tuesdays. We were making corn by Wednesdays. And on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, we had a nut roast Sunday. Yeah, I did that. It's called Veganuary, and the hardest part of it was calling it that without wanting to punch myself in the face. Because I come from the west of Scotland, right? So my wife, she found it really easy doing Veganuary because she's allergic to dairy and she's from London, so she's used to lots of different types of foods. I'm from the west of Scotland. We don't really eat vegetables, let alone only vegetables. It's just difficult for me. Every meal had meat on it when I was growing up, so I'm trying to change that. You know, and I've taken that into my adult life. I like a burger as much as the next 5 guys. Quite embarrassing for them, coming out with the same earrings on. Also, people, stop drinking almond milk. It's meant for baby almonds. Anyway, at one point in the month, we went for a work dinner to an Argentinian steakhouse. That was the longest hour of my life. I had to have a pasta. Look at my face. Miserable. Longest hour of my life. But I made it through the month. I only had there was a little bit of cheese on that. That was it. That's the only thing I had for the month. And I've tried to keep those changes going. And I drink a lot of coffee because I'm an academic and you have to get through. So I thought about, well, what's the environmental impact of coffee? But it turns out that if you have a white coffee, just a splash of milk in your coffee, you double the emissions associated with that coffee. And if you have a latte, yeah, because you're a big baby, you need a big glass of warm milk. Turns out your emissions are 15 times higher. I miss them so much. I wish I could have one. So what I've done, the main thing that I've changed now completely, I have changed my milk. I now only drink oat milk, which is really weird when I have it on porridge. It's like oat on oat action. I feel like the most Scottish man in the entire world. I can't get enough oats. Can someone grind down some oats for me and then pour them in my oats? Oh, I love oats. My dream is to be the guy in the front of the oats. So, ignore this slide. Basically, well, why did we do this? Why did I start making these changes? Well, I think it was on the 5th flight of our trip from Cambodia to Singapore, and that was when I actually read that study for the first time. I hadn't done any work for like 3 weeks, and I was like, I should probably check, and did some emails, and I read through, because I do very kind of big picture stuff, the Paris Agreement, but never like what people should do, and I thought, I'll read this paper, and I went through it. And I looked, and at the end of it, my head was swimming because I was just like, I do all these things. And there'd been this small Cambodian girl just staring at me from across the aisle. She, you know the way children do, just sort of staring into your face. And I felt like she was berating my life choices. And that was the first time that I ever thought maybe I shouldn't have a kid. Because it's weird, it's the only thing that I've pretty much ever been sure of in my entire adult life that I want to have a child one day. That and that people that call it guac instead of guacamole should be on a list. 2 things. And climate change. 3 things. Anyway. But I thought about that. So I turned to her, my wife, not the small Cambodian girl, and I said, listen, Jess, I don't think we should try for a baby until I feel like I can justify it, because I'm a hopeless romantic. And yeah, so we spent the next day just walking around Singapore in pretty much silence. Pretty sure she put a plastic water bottle in a non-recycling bin just to see if I'd say anything about it, which I did. Another day. And so, anyway, so when we got back, I decided to do something about it. So we did Veganuary together. And I think I've reduced my emissions by about, well, basically I've changed my milk and I've reduced the amount of meat I eat by about 3/4. So I've saved maybe about 0.6 tonnes. Now I thought, we found this sculpture of an actual 58-ton baby in Singapore, and I thought maybe I could use that to sort of show how much of my child that I've managed to offset, a hypothetical unborn child. So this is how much, in terms of changing my diet, that I have managed to save in emissions over the last year. There we go. It's a start. You've got to start somewhere. Pair of small green toes. So, we went on the trip, and it was an amazing trip. You know, travel is a great way to, you know, explore new cultures and find yourself, or try new cuisines and shit yourself. But the problem is getting there, flying. It's the most emissions-intensive thing that any of us can do. The only comparable thing that you could do to create that amount of emissions in that amount of time is setting a forest fire. Which would have been preferable to Magaluf in 2002. But fine, it's really, the problem is that it's, you know, it's great, it's good to go other places, but also it's really cheap. Like, it's unnecessarily cheap. We pay no airlines pay no jet fuel duty for the fuel that's used. We pay no VAT on airline tickets. It's highly subsidised, and you know, and trains are just seem to be getting more and more expensive. And somebody has to do something about it. It has to be both trains become cheaper and flying becomes more expensive, because that is the actual case. Now it's difficult because when I tell people this, all that they really hear is low prices. It's hard. Yeah, I'm trying to get people not to fly, but just tell them how cheap it is. So I don't know how to get around that. I think we need to make it less attractive to get on a flight than it is to spend 2 weeks in Bognor Regis. And that is a huge ask. So what I'm thinking is, you know, we need to come up with novel ideas. I'm thinking you know, some people are afraid of flying. I think we need to make more people afraid of flying. Glass floors on planes, actual snakes on a plane. Or just think, like, I like to talk to people when I'm on it and just talk about how we might crash. That's always good. I guess in a way, EasyJet and Ryanair are actually the most environmentally responsible airlines there are. I've put people off flying for years. So it's difficult, and you know, we could stay at home. My work colleague, Dr. Jim Bryce, and I call him a colleague because he's absolutely not a friend. He talks about he has staycations around the UK in places. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to find yourself in Norwich. Not the easiest thing in the world. So I don't know, what we need to do, you know, we need to change people's habits of flying, and that's very hard. Now, another thing that I noticed is a lot of airports on my trip. I kept seeing that they kept saying how they were reducing the emissions of the airport itself, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Basically, airports are trying to be like, oh, we're trying to be environmentally friendly. And I've noticed it with, there's loads of Exxon Mobil adverts recently as well that keep doing that, talking about how they're trying to be more environmentally friendly. Actually, the emissions of the airport itself account for about 1% of all of the emissions associated with owning and operating an airport. It's kind of like saying that you've got the most vegan abattoir. Because the cows eat grass. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so I offset our flights for the trip. That's one thing you can do, is you get someone to plant trees somewhere. Does it work? Does it fuck? The only way of checking is to fly back to the other side of the world. You plant those trees. So it's difficult. I don't know what to do. So I looked to see if there were other alternatives out there that we could do to solve the flying issue. And I got across a guy called Leo Murray that works for an organisation called freeride.org. You should check them out. And they got some really interesting stats on flying. I thought it was really interesting. They found out in the UK that 70% of all flights are taken by only 15% of people. Very small number of people. And that 57% of people in the UK don't fly in any single year. So, you know, people go, well, it's probably families going on holiday. No, people travel maybe once a year to go on holiday, that's about it. Is it businesses? Businesses are only about 12% of total flights. So they looked at what the most correlated things were with who this 15% were. And they found out that the main things that correlated with it were people that earn over £115,000 a year, people that own second homes abroad, And the main destination, if you sum them all up, are tax havens. So it's the good guys. Good guys are doing all the flying for us, which is great. So I guess climate change is a bit like religion, again, in the sense that it's mostly rich old white men that our children should be most afraid of. That's the nice version of that joke. So, basically, didn't manage to offset anything from flying this year. Hey! Which is a shame, but you know, so the one thing actually I was going to go back, so that organisation, they suggest a frequent flyer tax. That's their solution, which means that everybody in the UK gets one flight a year, no extra tax. So it becomes more equal, but if you take a second flight, you start paying a tax. If you take a third flight, it's a higher tax, and so on and so on and so on. So it's the rich people that are doing all the flying that pay for the harm that's causing the planet. And I think that seems like a fair way to go about it. Okay, so driving. As I said, driving accounts for 30% of the average person in the UK's emissions. There was also a recent study from the UK Energy Research Centre which suggested that every single car in London costs society and the NHS £7 each in terms of the health costs. So it turns out that Top Gear have been trying to kill the entire planet and not just Richard Hammond this whole time. I mean, that's an old joke, isn't it? He's not even on it anymore. Anyway, the Committee on Climate Change in the UK this year showed that basically transport's now contributing more emissions than any other sector of the UK economy. So our power sector emissions have come down, so it's great. Our power sector is getting much cleaner, and industry's come down as well, and waste has been reduced. There are some good news stories, but transport has just stayed the exact same for the last 28 years. So I think it's now the most important thing that we need to tackle. You know, the UK government have said they're going to try and ban all new petrol and diesel cars by 2040. I think that's so far away. The only issue I can see with banning diesel from cars now is that the next Fast and the Furious film would be terrible. Even more terrible. Vin Diesel, yes, okay. So the future's going to be great. Oh, hello. Hey! The future's going to be great. We're going to have electric cars. Basically, the next Transformers film is just going to be 3 hours of Optimus Prime recharging himself. It's going to be fun. I managed to test drive some electric cars myself this year, which was great. That jacket cost me 70 quid. Not worth it. Public transport. It's from the film Drive. Public transport's the way forward. There's a lot of deals to be had out there on public transport. We need better public transport. Megabus, for instance, at the moment, has a deal on absolutely no extra cost. They'll throw in post-traumatic stress disorder. Bullet train in Japan. We went on the bullet trains. Boom! They go past quicker than an hour's comedy lecture about climate change. Yeah, great. We need more of those here. So I sold our car this year. I mostly just used our car to go like a big shop. Basically, just go to Sainsbury's and fill up on oat milk. So I got rid of it. I now take the tube, which is absolutely fine for doing comedy because it's not as if I have to take a projector screen and a laptop everywhere I'm going. But it's fine. I now get to work. So at work, I normally take the tube, which is okay. But a couple of days a week, I'll ride share just to cut down costs with Dr. Jim Bryce, my colleague. The problem with that is we have to go with his son, and his son is so annoying. And I have to pick him up like from an after-school thing on the way home. And his son's always calling shotgun on me. I'm already in the front seat. That's not how it works. So now we both have to sit in the back. He likes to watch Cars on his iPad. I tell him cars are bad for the planet. And I made him watch An Inconvenient Truth. Supposedly inappropriate for a 7-year-old child. Anyway, fuck him. So how much is selling a car managed to offset in the last year? Ooh, a pair of little green socks. Exciting. So it's difficult to talk to people about climate change. That's what I find. Because if people feel like they're being attacked all the time. If you're not vegan and someone says that they're vegan, they often feel like they're being attacked for eating meat. Or it's the same with driving. If someone's into Top Gear or whatever, Racer magazine, something, then Auto Trader. Then they might feel attacked if you're saying you need to stop driving or change the cars that you like or whatever. And it's difficult because a lot of people's livelihoods depend on that. Well, I'll use driving example. So my grandfather, that's my grandpa, right? And he used to, that's me, by the way. It's not just a random child. He used to drive trucks in the shipyard for the shipyards in Glasgow. And he also used to drive a tank in World War II. So his whole life was driving. He basically taught me to drive. I remember doing this when it was an early memory when I was in the car. He was driving and I did this technique. Do you remember this thing as a kid? You'd pretend that you were stretching your thumb like that. I remember doing that to him and we both nearly died. Fucking hell, son! Anyway, but a lovely man. We were very close and he worked there. But basically in 2005 I'd been away studying abroad for a year and I came back. And about a month after I came back, he died from asbestos poisoning, asbestosis. And the asbestos industry for years and years tried to cover up the fact that it was causing harm to people. And it used misinformation campaigns and lobbying to make everybody feel like they didn't know what the science was. And that's what's been happening then with the tobacco industry for decades and for about the last 25 years with climate change. And basically what they're trying to do is they're just trying to keep these 75% of the people just unsure, so that they don't feel alarmed about it, so that there's some uncertainty there and they don't feel like they have to make choices, because then they don't have to do anything about it, and then the fossil fuel companies don't need to change their habits or their practices. So it's easier for everyone if we just ignore this and hope it goes away. But it affects people, and it's affected my family, and my worry is that it's going to affect my children or my grandchildren, and that the exact same thing's going to happen again. And environmental harm just will go unchecked, and I'm worried that we're making the same mistakes again and again and again in different areas. So that's my grandpa. That's my gran. She's still alive. She's 89, and she comes from a family of 11 kids. She's the last survivor of 11 children. So what we know is that my family's history consists of driving and people with absolutely no sense of birth control. And I'm supposed to have a kid, is what I'm saying. Anyway, so serious bit over. So basically, I'd done all the big things: driving, changing my diet. I hadn't done anything with flying because we went on a trip, but I could try and change that. But then I thought, well, I've only done so much, a pair of little green socks. I need to go back and have a look and see what else was in the paper. And maybe if I do all the small things and add them up, I'll get even further. So I had a look. Upgrading your light bulbs is about 0.1 tonnes, and recycling every time is about 0.21 tonnes over a year. So change for light bulbs, and then I got my wife to do that so that I didn't fall. And do my recycling. I mean, I'm part of a performer. And then hang dry your clothes is about 0.21 tonnes, and wash your clothes in cold water is about 1/4 of a tonne. So for the year I hung dry my clothes and I washed all my clothes. And that's about another tonne I've managed to offset there. And I thought, great, I'm on a bit of a roll now, so I'll go and see if there's anything else. So I read the paper for a third time, and basically there was two things that they didn't include in it because they didn't have the right data, but there were other high impact individual actions that you can take. The first one is not owning a dog. Yes. And that is easily the most controversial thing that I will say in this show. You can tell people not to have kids, and they're like, okay, I guess so. Tell them not to have a dog, and they're like, what the fuck did you say about Mr. Schnabel? I will have you. But, I don't like dogs myself. I'm not a fan. That's what I'm saying. I just don't see the point in them. Like, guide dogs, okay. Fair. Police dogs, okay, I get the point. But like, this guy, I don't see the point of that guy. We'd all be better off if that was a dead dog. We would, wouldn't we? We'd all... Listen, how many dogs would I have to kill a year to have a child. Thinking a dog, right, maybe about a tenth of a person's emissions. You could have 5 dogs over the lifetime of a, that's about 100 dogs a year I'm having to kill just if I want to have a kid. And if it's one of these wee guys, 200 of them. Come here, boy. Come here, boy. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Oh, hey. He's a good boy. Or you could change your energy provider. That's one of the biggest things you can possibly do. It's about 1.3, 1.6 tons. It's much higher than meat. It's about the same as flying, roughly. There's lots of good green energy companies out there if you want to do that. So that's it. That's your choices. Either you go home after this show and change your energy provider, or you start killing dogs. Why not be like me and try both? But green energy is the way forward. Where I'm from, in Scotland, we have a lot of renewable energy. Alex Salmond once said that Scotland is the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy. Genuinely said that. Which got me thinking, I wonder what Saudi Arabia is the Scotland of. Perhaps not drinking. Alex Salmond is the Findus Crispy Pancakes of weird analogies. So, we need more emissions, we need it attacked after Brexit. So we are, at the moment, we're part of the EU emissions trading scheme, but we need to make sure that there's a price on carbon in the UK after that. Now this is a Pigovian tax. You don't get this at Jimmy Carr, do you? I'd like to see him try and make this fine. I mean, he would do it. Yeah, so a carbon tax is a way of putting a higher price, and you internalise the cost that it's having on the planet. I don't know if you guys remember Captain Planet. Does anyone remember? Yeah. Captain Planet. What a guy! Oh, he's your favourite. He's if you don't know who he was like a cartoon guy, and he used to save stop pollution every Saturday morning. But he'd actually get kids to do it for him. Sort of weird sweatshop environment. But he had a song, and the song was the best, and it went, Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to 0. But the guy clearly wasn't an economist. Otherwise he would have reduced pollution from Q1 to Q2. Which is the socially optimal level of carbon. And that's my favourite joke. There was an economist in the audience once that asked to come on stage and have his picture taken with that slide. Because it's that good an economics joke. If you have a master's degree or above in economics and you know who Captain Planet is, top 3 jokes of all time. Anyway, so let's see how much I managed to offset from doing all those small things and then changing my energy provider, not the dogs. Here we go. Whoa, we're going to get there. A pair of sort of almost knee-high socks. Now, people have a go at me when I talk about controlling the dog population, but no one seemed to bother when Prince William talked earlier this year about overpopulation causing the degradation of ecosystems while having his 3rd child. I don't know what the carbon footprint of a royal baby is, right? First of all, I don't know what lizards eat. And then they just go around the world planting trees, don't they, and then getting back on a plane. It's weird, right? So there are groups out there that think population control is the way forward. I'm not entirely sure that that is the case. Basically, I had a look at emissions per capita. So different countries have different levels of emissions. The UK is part of the EU, about, as I say, it's about 8 tonnes roughly, similar to Japan. Other countries are much larger emissions per capita. The world average is a lot lower. And if you took a child from Cambodia, you could have, I did a calculation, you could have 20 children in Cambodia for the same emissions of having 1 child in the UK. And if you were to go down to the Bureau de Change at King's Cross, they will do that exchange for absolutely no commission. But I thought this is good. So you know that number about the child was a world average number that they came up with, and I thought, well, I want to know how they did it. So I went and looked at the paper again to see how they got this central estimate. And actually, they only took an average of 3 countries because that was the only data they had. I think more work needs to be done in this area, but you can see that the US brings that average way up to 58.6, and actually the UK is very similar to Japan. So I think a rough estimate for a child in the UK is actually, you know, more, unless I move to the US, for the UK is much more like 27 tonnes. So basically I've managed to reduce the emissions of my child just by doing maths a bit better. UK specific anyway. What's this? What's happening, Molly?
They want you to read a letter.
Oh, okay. Don't know if I've got time for this. Okay. You haven't asked me before to read this letter, so I don't understand. Easy for you just to sit back there. Oh, you have to read a letter. I have to come up and actually read it. Sorry, okay, statement on behalf of the sponsors. The authority of Dr. Matt Winning as a researcher on this topic is highly questionable. Independent research commissioned shows that there's insufficient evidence of a conclusive link between anthropogenic greenhouse gases and the current rise in global average surface temperature. More work is needed. Dr. Winning's PhD was funded by a renewable energy consortium, therefore his independence on the topic must be questioned. He's refused to give us access to his emails and is arrogant to believe that humans can affect the climate, and his over-the-top attack on dogs clearly to detract from the rumours that he loves dogs a little bit too much. Okay, so that's me again as a kid. I keep showing pictures of me. I didn't realise how many there were of me as a kid. So I worry a lot, right? Because my dad's a worrier, my grandpa's a worrier, and I worry about having a kid. And I would worry anyway without climate change, right? Because I sleep a lot, right? I love sleeping. And I worry that I'm going to have a kid. Because I didn't sleep as a baby, and my dad used to have to take me out and drive me around at night to get me to go to sleep, so my emissions as a child were probably much higher than everyone else's. But I live in London, so if I have a kid, I'm going to have to be going on a night bus every night trying to get them to go to sleep. Can you two stop fingering each other and try to talk down? And also, I live in London. If I have a kid in London, that means my wife, she's English. That means I'm going to have an English child. So not only going to be doing the worst thing that you could do for the planet, having a child, I'm going to be having the worst kind of a child there is. English child. I'm going to be like, oh daddy, can we have a dog? I'm not going to be able to say no to them wanting if they want a dog. My kid wants a dog, I'm going to be like, okay. You know, a lot of people will use pets to teach their children about death. I'm just going to be much more explicit about nightly trips. But basically, we have about 20 years left to make the sort of radical changes that we need. And there's a report last week. If we want to stay below 1.5 degrees, the next 12 years, we need to halve global emissions, and it's huge. So I think we need everybody on board. We need politicians and scientists and people. Can't be they need to sort it or they need to. We all have to sort this, and we all have to take some responsibility. A wise person once said, "I believe the children are our future." A climate scientist? No. Whitney Houston. And I agree with Whitney, but also think it depends on what kind of a child you have, right? If I have a vegan child, clever child who somehow invents the world's first zero carbon airline, yeah, they're already offsetting themselves. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the point of this show is don't have too many children, right? But also you don't have to have no children. Just have better children. Make sure they're good. But you can only do so much yourselves. I've tried to, as I showed, I've tried to offset my child, and I got about halfway to doing it, roughly, by doing everything that I could think of doing. And that's not enough. So we have to act together. We have to think of acting with family and friends on how we can influence other people to make the changes as well. You often see solar panels on houses. And the reason that that's really good for climate change is that other people in that neighbourhood will see that they are acting on climate change, that they're doing something good, and that they'll change their behaviour based on that. Recycling's not so good because you can't go in people's bins unless you want the police called on you and see what they're doing. But solar panels are really good. So that's what, if you start making, better changes, then they can catch on, is what I'm saying. So that's what I've started trying to do. I set up a petition to ban all new fossil fuel vehicles by 2030. There's a lot of MPs have actually come out and said that we need to do it much sooner, and I think that's the main thing that we could do in the UK right now. There are some jokes up there. We don't have time. What else is going on? And the other thing is, I've managed to basically over the last year, I've been putting the code to my green energy supplier in all of my shows to see try to keep track of how many people have changed their energy supplier after seeing me, and I've now just got it up to 40 people in the last year have changed their energy supplier after coming to see me, which means that I've managed to offset just over 50 tons of carbon a year based on other people starting to do stuff, which means I think I've managed to offset What's that smell? So yeah, I managed to offset, I think, having a child, which is good, because about 2 weeks before the Edinburgh Festival, so the kind of middle of July, my wife and I went for lunch because I was about to go away for a month, and we went together for lunch, and I was banging on about how I didn't have an ending for the show, blah 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 blah. Because I'm a comedian and that's what I do. She said, "Matthew, can you shut up? You haven't stopped talking for about 40 minutes. I've been to the toilet twice and you haven't noticed. I need to tell you something." And she did, and then we went to the doctors straight away on Monday morning, and they told us that we are pregnant. Unfortunately, it's with twins. So this was an enormous waste of time. Thanks very much. Up in that wedding. Cheers for coming, guys. Thank you very much.
So, rising sea levels, heat waves, droughts. What have you got to say for yourself? What are you doing about it? Absolutely nothing.